The classroom was buzzing until the kick. A hard thud against Maya's chair sent her notebook flying, pages scattering like wounded birds. Laughter echoed. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "She's overreacting." But Maya didn't move. She just stared ahead, eyes burning, jaw locked tight. Her teacher looked up, saw everything, and said nothing. That silence was louder than the laughter. When the video of that moment hit social media, no one expected what would follow. Not the bullies, not the teacher, not even Maya herself, because the real truth, was about to burn through their perfect little world and expose every secret they'd tried to hide. This isn't just a story about bullying. It's about what happens when the one you thought was powerless decides to fight back. Maya Johnson was 16, quiet and sharp in ways most people never noticed. She loved words the way they could slice or soothe and dreamed of becoming a writer someday, maybe even the first in her family to attend college. But at Crestwood High, dreams like hers didn't seem to matter much. She'd transferred there only 3 months earlier. One of the few black students in an almost entirely white school tucked in a polished suburban town. From day one, she felt at the stares that lasted too long. The whispers that died when she walked by, the small, sharp jokes disguised as just playing, wasn't always open cruelty. Sometimes it was silence, the kind that builds walls. Her mom, a nurse who worked double shifts, told her, "Baby, you just keep your head up. Don't let them shake your peace." So she did. She kept her head down, headphones in, grades high. Still, the feeling followed her. In the hallways, at lunch, during group projects when partners conveniently forgot to include her, she wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of proving she belonged in every room she walked into. There was one place she found a little calm: the back row of Mr. Callahan's English class. He taught poetry, her favorite. But even that day, as she sat writing in her notebook, she could feel it, the smirks, the eyes on her, the tension she'd learned to ignore. What she didn't know was that today, ignoring wouldn't be enough. Because before the final bell rang, something would happen that would change the entire school, to make sure no one ever forgot her name again. It started small, like most things do. A paper ball thrown from the second row. It landed on Maya's desk, bouncing once before rolling into her lap. She didn't look up. She knew the laugh that followed. It was Chloe, the self-crowned queen of Crestwood High, blonde hair, perfect nails, and a voice that could cut through glass. Beside her sat Dylan, football star, grin like he'd never heard the word consequence. They whispered, snickered, feeding each other's cruelty as if it were oxygen. Maya kept her eyes on her notebook. Mr. Callahan was writing something on the board. Poetry is truth in its purest form. The irony was painful. Because right then, Maya's truth was humiliation. The snickers grew louder, followed by the sound of a phone camera clicking. "Hey," Chloe said, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "What's that in your hair?" "Oh, wait, guess, it's just your hair." Few students laughed. A few looked away. One boy shook his head but said nothing. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she flipped the page in her notebook. She'd learned that silence could be armor. But armor gets heavy after a while. Then came the kick, a sharp, sudden thud against her chair. The jolt sent her pen flying across the desk. Her chair lurched forward, scraping against the floor, echoing through the classroom, gasps, then laughter. It rippled through the room like a cruel wave, bouncing off the white walls. Someone muttered, "Relax, it's just a joke." It never was. Maya turned slowly, her eyes meeting Dylan's. He smirked, leaning back casually, spinning his pen between his fingers. Chloe raised her phone, recording. "Smile," she said. Mr. Callahan turned from the board, eyes flicking across the scene. For a second, just one heartbeat, Maya thought he might say something, but his face froze, uncertain. Then he turned back to the board. "Let's stay focused, everyone." And that was it. The room filled with whispers. Maya could feel her pulse pounding in her ears, her breath quick and shallow. Every second stretched into an eternity. She could feel their eyes crawling over her, studying her reaction, waiting for her to explode or cry or beg. But she didn't. She straightened her chair, picked up her pen, and kept writing. The words blurred through her tears, but she kept going. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Chloe giggled and uploaded the clip. Within minutes, it was on Snapchat, captioned, "Someone's having a bad hair day." By lunch, it had spread through half the school. By evening, someone had posted it on TikTok. The comments came fast, some cruel, some sympathetic, most just watching like it was entertainment. Maya saw it that night when she opened her phone. Her stomach dropped as she read the comments. Why is she so mad, though? Typical overreaction. Poor thing. Just transfer schools already. Her fingers hovered over the delete button. But something inside her, something deep, something fierce stopped her. She stared at the video one last time, then whispered to herself, "They don't even know me." She was right, because the girl in that video, thought, quiet one who sat still while the world laughed, she wasn't going to stay quiet for long. Somewhere between humiliation and heartbreak, something inside Maya began to shift. A spark. Small, but alive. And the people who thought they'd broken her, they were about to learn what happens when you push someone too far. That night, the house felt heavier than usual. Maya sat at the edge of her bed, the glow from her phone screen lighting her face in a dull blue. The video had crossed 50,000 views. Comments still poured, in each one a tiny cut that stung worse than the last. Some mocked her hair. Others blamed her for playing the victim. Only a handful defended her, but even those felt hollow. She locked her phone and dropped it beside her, pressing her palms to her eyes until she saw stars. Her mom knocked softly on the door. "Maya, baby, you okay?" Maya took a shaky breath. "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine." But she wasn't. She could hear her voice cracking, could feel the tears threatening again. Her mom stood in the doorway, her scrubs wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. She'd just gotten off a 12-hour shift, and still. She walked in and sat beside Maya. "You've been quiet," her mom said softly. "Talk to me." Maya hesitated, then unlocked her phone and handed it over. Her mom watched the video in silence. When it ended, she exhaled slowly, her face a mixture of hurt and anger. "They did this to you? And that teacher just stood there?" Maya nodded. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "It's just what happens." Her mom's eyes glistened. "No, it's not what happens. It's what's been allowed to happen. But baby, this doesn't define you." "I know," Maya said, but she didn't believe it. Not yet. After her mom left, Maya sat in the dark. The sound of laughter from the video kept echoing in her mind. It wasn't just the bullying, it was the silence that followed. The way no one spoke up. The way people shared the clip, some laughing, some pitying, but none of them doing anything. She grabbed her notebook, the same one from class. Her handwriting was messy, shaky, but she wrote anyway. She wrote everything she couldn't say aloud. "They think they broke me. They think I'm weak. But I'm tired of being quiet. I'm tired of pretending this doesn't hurt." They looked foreign, powerful. She wrote more pages of pain, anger, truth. When she finished, she closed the notebook and pressed it to her chest. For the first time all day, she felt a little less alone. The next morning, she didn't want to go to school. Her stomach twisted with dread. She imagined the whispers, the stares, the phones pointed her way again. But her mom stood by the door, keys in hand. "You don't run from this," she said. "You walk in there with your head up, just like I taught you. You hear me?" Maya nodded slowly. She walked into Crestwood like a ghost. The hallways felt colder. Conversations stopped when she passed. She could feel eyes on her, the weight of judgment and curiosity. But she kept walking head up, eyes forward. In English class, Mr. Callahan didn't look at her when she entered. She sat in her usual seat, heart pounding. When class ended, she gathered her things, ready to disappear, when his voice stopped her. "Maya," he said quietly, "can you stay a moment?" She froze. For a second, she thought he was going to scold her for disrupting class or for the video causing attention. But when she looked up, his face was different. There was regret there. "Shame. I saw the video," he said softly. And I should have done something that day. I didn't. I froze, and I'm sorry. Maya blinked. She hadn't expected that. Teachers didn't usually apologize, he continued. What happened to you was wrong. But the way you handled it, that was strength. Real strength. You didn't deserve any of that? Her throat tightened. She wanted to be angry, to tell him his silence hurt more than the laughter. But instead she whispered, "It's fine." "No," he said firmly. "It's not. Listen. If you ever want to talk or if you need help addressing this with the school, I'll stand with you." Something inside her shifted again just a little. A door cracked open where before there had only been walls. That afternoon she sat alone in the library. She pulled out her notebook again, flipping to a fresh page. But instead of writing about pain, she started writing a story. A story about a girl who got laughed at, filmed, humiliated, and fought back with her truth. She didn't know why she started, but the words poured out like they'd been waiting. Sometimes strength doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers through the cracks until the whole world hears it. She looked at the line and smiled faintly. Maybe her story could matter. Maybe her voice could be louder than their laughter. For the next few days, she avoided social media. She focused on her writing, her schoolwork, quiet moments of peace like watching the rain fall outside her window or helping her mom make dinner. But the video still haunted her. Every time she heard a laugh in the hallway, she flinched. Every time someone whispered, she wondered if it was about her. One afternoon, while waiting for her mom after school, she saw Dylan and Chloe in the parking lot. They laughed like nothing had happened, surrounded by friends. For a brief moment, Maya felt that same anger bubbling up. But then, another thought followed. They still don't get it. They still think I'm beneath them. She realized something then. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her power that night. She opened her laptop and typed the first line of a post. "I'm the girl in the video. But that's not all I am." She hesitated, fingers trembling above the keyboard. Then she hit post. It wasn't revenge. It was release. She didn't know how people would react. She didn't know if anyone would even care. But for the first time since that day, Maya felt free, because she wasn't hiding anymore. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning of something bigger, a story that wasn't just hers anymore, but one that could give others the courage to speak to. The next morning, Maya woke with a strange kind of calm. She didn't check her phone, didn't scroll through the comments, didn't care how many people had seen her post. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about her. For the first time in weeks, she looked at herself in the mirror and didn't see the girl in the viral video. She saw the girl who survived it. At school, the air had changed. Whispers still followed her, but this time, they were different. Softer. Curious. Some students looked at her with guilt in their eyes. Others with quiet admiration. A few even murmured, "Hey, that was brave," as they passed. She didn't respond, just nodded and kept walking. When she entered English class, Mr. Callahan smiled slightly. "Maya," he said, "I read your post." "Oh, it was powerful," he said. "Would you ever consider sharing your writing with the class? There's a student showcase coming up the schools, doing a creative arts night next month. You could read something of your own." Maya hesitated. Her first instinct was to say no. The thought of standing in front of everyone, the same people who'd laughed at her, filmed her, spread her humiliation, felt terrifying. But then she thought of her words. The ones she'd written late at night in her notebook. The ones that had pulled her through the darkness. Maybe she said quietly. Mr. Callahan smiled. "Just think about it. You have something important to say. People need to hear it." That night, Maya couldn't stop thinking about it. She reread the messages she'd received since her post went viral again, only this time in a different way. Thousands of people had seen her story. And many were leaving comments like, "You're stronger than you know. Thank you for speaking up." My daughter went through the same thing. Her words were resonating. Her pain had become someone else's strength. That realization sparked something fierce in her chest, so she decided to do it. The next few weeks, became a blur of preparation. Every evening after finishing homework, she'd sit at her desk and write, sometimes for hours. She rewrote, crossed out, reimagined. Her mom would peek in and bring her tea, smiling proudly. "What's it about?" her mom asked one night. Maya smiled faintly. "It's about not letting them define you. It's about what it means to take your power back." Her mom nodded. "That's my girl." At school, Chloe and Dylan still carried themselves like royalty. The video hadn't affected them the same way it had made them infamous. Yes, but they wore it like a badge. "It's just jokes," Dylan said once when he passed Maya in the hallway. "No hard feelings, right?" Maya met his eyes, steady and cold. "Only from people who think cruelty's funny." He smirked but didn't reply. For the first time, she noticed something behind that, grinned something like discomfort. Power shifted quietly that day. One afternoon in English, Mr. Callahan asked everyone to submit a short piece for peer review. When Maya read her piece aloud, the room fell silent. It wasn't directly about the bullying, but the pain beneath it was unmistakable. They said silence was strength, but silence is what kept me invisible. Now my voice shakes the air, and I won't whisper anymore. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then, softly, someone clapped. It was Sarah's shy girl who usually sat near the window. Then another student joined, and another. Before long, the whole class was applauding. Even Mr. Callahan's eyes looked glassy. Chloe shifted in her seat, her face pale. Dylan looked uncomfortable, tapping his pen. Maya didn't gloat. She simply smiled, thanked the class, and sat down. After class, Chloe caught up with her in the hallway. "So what, you're like a poet now?" she said, rolling her eyes. Maya turned to her calmly. "No, I've always been one. You just never noticed." That night, Maya rewrote her performance piece for the showcase. It wasn't a revenge story. It was a declaration. It told of a girl who was mocked for her skin, her voice, her hair, but who refused to let cruelty define her worth. It was filled with rhythm, emotion, and imagery words that pulsed like a heartbeat. As the showcase approached, her nerves grew. She imagined standing on that stage, lights glaring, faces staring back. But she also imagined her mom in the front row smiling. She imagined the girls watching online who'd felt small, just like she once did. When the night finally arrived, the auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, students all gathered under the warm glow of stage lights. Mr. Callahan greeted her backstage, a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be," she said. She waited behind the curtain, heart pounding. Through the fabric, she could hear the muffled sound of applause for the performer before her. Then, the announcer's voice echoed. "Next up, we have Maya Johnson, performing an original piece titled Unbroken." Maya stepped out. The spotlight hit her, bright and blinding. For a moment, her throat tightened. But then she looked out into the crowd and saw her mom's eyes. Shining with pride, she took a deep breath and began. Her voice trembled at first, but soon it steadied. "They tried to make me small. They tried to teach me shame. But I learned that strength isn't found in their approval. It's born in the fire of their hate." As she spoke, the words rolled out like a wave building, cresting, unstoppable. The room was silent. Every syllable carried the weight of truth, pain, and defiance. "I am not your joke. I am not your silence. I am the echo of every girl who's ever been told to shrink to make others feel tall." By the time she reached her final line, tears streamed down faces across the room. "And when they tell me I don't belong, I smile, because I already built a place of my own." The room erupted in applause. Not polite clapping, but thunderous, heartfelt applause. Some people stood. Her mom wiped tears from her cheeks, clapping so hard her hands turned red. Mr. Callahan stood too, eyes shining. Chloe and Dylan were in the back row. Chloe looked pale, frozen. Dylan looked down at his shoes. For the first time, Maya felt it not revenge, not satisfaction, but peace. She had spoken her truth, and the world had listened. After the show, people surrounded her. Strangers told her she was inspiring. A teacher from another department asked if she'd consider publishing her piece in the school newsletter. Someone even mentioned a citywide poetry contest. She smiled and thanked them.
Ow.
But inside, she was still processing what had just happened. She'd faced her worst fear and turned it into her power. Later, as the auditorium emptied, Chloe approached her. She looked nervous, uncertain. "Hey," she said softly. "That was good. I mean, really good." Maya watched her carefully. "Thanks." Chloe hesitated, then added, "I didn't realize how bad it was. What we did." "I was just trying to be funny," Maya finished. Chloe nodded, shame flickering in her eyes. "Yeah, I'm sorry." Maya looked at her for a long moment. The old her would have brushed it off or stayed silent. But this new Maya understood something deeper. "I accept your apology," she said finally. "But you should understand, sorry doesn't erase what happened. It's what you do next that matters." Chloe nodded again, her voice small. "You're right. When Maya got home that night, her mom was waiting with open arms. You were amazing," she whispered, hugging her tightly. Maya smiled into her shoulder. "It feels like I finally found my voice." Her mom pulled back and touched her cheek. "You didn't find it, baby? You always had it. You just stopped letting them drown it out." In the following weeks, Maya's poem was published online and quickly gained traction. Local newspapers picked it up. A few journalists reached out to interview her about her experience. She became a symbol of resilience not because she fought back with anger, but because she fought back with grace and truth. Crestwood High couldn't ignore what had happened anymore. The administration launched an investigation into the bullying, implemented diversity and inclusion workshops, and even invited Maya to speak at an assembly about her experience. Standing on that stage weeks later in front of the entire school, Maya felt no fear, only strength. "Some of you saw what happened to me," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Some of you laughed. Some of you stayed silent. But I want you to understand, silence is a choice. And every time we stay silent, we give cruelty permission to breathe." The room was silent. Even Chloe and Dylan listened, heads bowed. Maya took a deep breath, looked out across the crowd, and smiled softly. "I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to remind you that what you do matters. What you say matters. And who you choose to stand up for matters most of all." When she stepped off that stage, the applause was softer this time, but more meaningful. It wasn't about fame. It was about impact. And as Maya walked through the hallway later, she didn't feel invisible anymore. She felt seen, heard, whole. Her story had started with humiliation, but it had become something far greater. It had become a movement. And deep down, she knew this was just the beginning of her rise. The week after Maya's assembly speech, everything at Crestwood felt different. The air that once carried whispers now hummed with quiet reflection. Teachers greeted her in the halls. Students who used to look away now nodded, some even offering small smiles of acknowledgement. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. What Maya didn't know was that her story was still unfolding, in ways she couldn't imagine. One Thursday afternoon, she was sitting in the library working on an essay when her phone buzzed with a notification. At first she ignored it, assuming it was another message of support from her growing online following. But when the notifications kept coming 3, then 5, then 10, she frowned and checked. A new video was trending on social media, but this time it wasn't of her. It was of them. The video was raw, unfiltered footage from the same day they had kicked her chair. But someone, somewhere, had captured what happened before the clip that went viral. The original video, the one everyone had seen, made it look like Maya had overreacted, like she was just a quiet girl who couldn't take a joke. But this one showed everything. The paper ball, the slurs muttered under their breath, the teacher turning around and pretending not to see. The caption read, "The full story they didn't show you." Maya's heart raced as she watched. It was painful to relive, but she couldn't look away. The truth was out and undeniable, unedited, and it spread faster than the first video ever had. Within hours, it had millions of views. People were furious. The comments flooded in. Now this is the real story. How could a teacher just stand there? They owe her more than an apology. The poor girl. I hope she's okay. By the next morning, the school was chaos. News reporters showed up outside the gates. Students whispered in the halls. The principal called an emergency assembly. Maya sat in homeroom, nerves twisting in her stomach. She hadn't leaked the video. She didn't even know who had. But she knew what it meant. Justice was coming. One way or another, when the announcement came over the intercom, all students, please report to the auditorium. Maya felt her heart hammer against her ribs. The principal. Ms. Reynolds stood on the stage, her face pale but composed. Behind her sat Mr. Callahan, Chloe, and Dylan. The room buzzed with tension. Maya took a seat near the back. I know many of you have seen the video circulating online, she began, voice trembling slightly. First, I want to say that Crestwood High does not tolerate discrimination, bullying, or any form of harassment. The footage that has surfaced is deeply troubling, and we take it very seriously. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Chloe sat stiffly, eyes red from crying. Dylan's jaw was tight. His usual arrogance gone, Ms. Reynolds continued, effective immediately. Both students involved in the incident, Chloe Brooks and Dylan Carter, are suspended pending further disciplinary action. An internal investigation is underway regarding the teacher's inaction as well. Gasps erupted. A few students clapped quietly. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Maya's stomach turned. This was justice, but it didn't feel as satisfying as she thought it would. Then Ms. Reynolds did something unexpected. Before we conclude, one of our students is asked to say a few words. Maya Johnson, would you please come up? Every eye turned toward her. Her mom squeezed her hand gently. Maya took a breath, stood, and walked to the front. The sound of her shoes against the floor was deafening in the silence. When she reached the microphone, she hesitated. For a moment, she saw flashes of the past, the laughter, the humiliation, the tears. But then she looked at the audience, at the mix of shame, curiosity, support staring back at her, and she knew exactly what to say. I didn't post that video. She began softly, her voice steady. But I saw it, and yeah, it hurt to watch again. It hurt because it reminded me of how small I felt that day. But what hurt more wasn't the kick or the laughter, it was the silence. The people who saw it happen and said nothing. The people who watched the first video and laughed instead of asking what really happened. The room was still. No whispers now, just her voice. I've been angry for a long time, she continued. Angry at them, angry at my teacher, angry at everyone who let it happen. But I've realized something. Anger might expose the problem, but forgiveness is what heals it. I'm not saying what they did was okay. It wasn't, but I'm saying I refuse to let that moment define me or them. She turned to look at Chloe and Dylan. I hope you learn from this. I hope you understand the power of your words, your laughter, your actions. Because the pain you cause doesn't just disappear, echoes. But so does kindness. Then slowly, people began to clap. It started with one, then a few, then the entire auditorium erupted in applause. Some stood. Some cried. Even Ms. Reynolds wiped her eyes. Maya stepped back, tears welling up. Her mom smiled proudly from the front row, hands clasped together as if she were praying. Later that afternoon, as the school day ended, Maya sat under a tree outside the building, feeling the cool breeze brush against her skin. For the first time, the weight she'd been carrying felt lighter. That's when Chloe approached her. She looked completely different. No makeup, no perfect hair, just raw humanity. Maya, she said softly. Maya looked up. Hey, I don't know if you'll ever believe me, Chloe began, but I'm sorry. Not just for the kick or the video, but for everything. The jokes, the looks, all of it. I did it because I thought it made me powerful. I thought people would like me more if I was the one everyone watched. But now, everyone's watching, and I've never felt smaller. You've got a lot to make up for. I know, Chloe said, eyes glistening. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I'm going to counseling. My parents made me, but honestly I needed it. I'm learning a lot about myself, about how easy it is to become what you hate. Maya nodded slowly. That's good. Just make sure this lesson doesn't fade when people stop talking about it. Chloe smiled faintly, tears slipping down her cheeks. It won't, I promise. She hesitated, then added, and your poem. It changed me. You changed me. After she walked away, Maya sat in silence, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, peace. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt whole. Over the next few weeks, the media attention grew. National outlets picked up the story. Headlines read things like Students' Poem Sparks Movement Against Bullying, and Viral Video Leads to Real Change at Crestwood High. Name became a symbol of courage and transformation. But she never let the fame go to her head. When she spoke at events, she didn't talk about being a victim, she talked about being a survivor. She told students everywhere that standing up didn't always mean shouting it. Sometimes meant simply refusing to stay silent. Meanwhile, Mr. Callahan publicly apologized in an interview. I failed Maya that day, he said. But I've learned that silence is complicity. I'll never make that mistake again. The school reassigned him to lead a new initiative, Voices of Change, student storytelling project that used writing and art to explore issues of race, identity, and empathy. Maya was the first to sign up. The project grew quickly. Students from every background began sharing their experiences, stories of being judged, excluded, misunderstood. It became a safe space, something Crestwood had never been before. One day after a meeting, Maya noticed Dylan standing by the door waiting. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd been standing there for a while. Hey, he said finally. Hey, Maya replied, cautious but calm. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said quickly. I wanted to say thank you. For what you said at the assembly, you didn't have to defend us. You could have let us burn. But you didn't. Maya crossed her arms. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, Dylan, but it's the only way I can move forward. He nodded, eyes down. I get that now, and I joined the Voices of Change thing. Thought maybe I should start learning instead of running my mouth. She tilted her head, surprised. Really? He nodded. Yeah, I figured. If I can help stop even one person from doing what I did, maybe that's a start. Maya smiled faintly. It is. When she got home that night, she sat by her window watching the sunset bleed across the sky. Her phone buzzed again, another wave of messages, this time from schools across the country, inviting her to speak. She'd become more than just the girl from the video. She was a voice for those who hadn't found theirs yet. She opened her notebook. Flipping to the last page where she'd scribbled her thoughts the night of the bullying, she read the words, "They think they broke me. They think I'm weak," and smiled softly. Then she added a new line beneath it. But I was never broken. I was being rebuilt. Weeks later, Maya stood on another stage, this time in front of hundreds of students from different schools. Her story had inspired change beyond Crestwood. Programs, clubs, and campaigns had started across the district, all carrying one message: speak up, stand tall, stay kind. As she finished her speech, she looked out into the audience and saw faces of every color. Every story united in understanding. That was the true reversal, not just the exposure of her bullies, but the transformation of a community that had once turned its back. The moment she walked off the stage, her mom hugged her tight. You did it, Maya, she whispered. Maya smiled, her heart full. No, Mom, she said softly. We did. The story that had begun with cruelty had become something no one saw coming, a movement of truth, forgiveness, and change. The bully's laughter had once echoed through the classroom. Now, it was her voice that echoed through the world, and it wasn't a cry of pain anymore. It was a roar of power. The auditorium lights dimmed to a warm amber glow, painting the faces of hundreds of students, teachers, and parents in shades of gold. It was Crestwood High's annual spring showcase, but this year felt different. The seats were filled not just with families, but with reporters, activists, and community members who had followed Maya's story since it went viral. Maya stood backstage, clutching her worn leather notebook, the same one that had carried her through every breakdown. Every sleepless night, every revelation. Her palms were damp, her heart thudding in her chest like a drum. It wasn't fear that consumed her, it was the weight of what this moment meant. She glanced at the small, mere prop beside the curtain. The reflection, staring back at her, wasn't the timid girl who once kept her head down in English class. Her curls framed her face like a crown, her eyes steady and alive. She'd come here not to perform, but to speak truth. Mr. Callahan stepped beside her. "They're ready for you," he said softly. Maya nodded, taking one last deep breath before stepping onto the stage. The crowd quieted instantly. The only sound was the distant hum of the lights and the soft creak of the microphone as she adjusted it. "Hi," she began, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "Some of you know me as the girl from that video, the one who got kicked in class while everyone laughed." She paused. "But that's not who I am anymore. Tonight, I want to tell you who I really am and what I've learned." She opened her notebook and began to read not a poem this time, but a story. Her story? There was a day when I thought silence was safety, when I thought staying small would make me invisible enough to survive, but silence doesn't protect you, it buries you. And when I stopped being quiet, I realized my voice wasn't just mine. It belonged to every person who's ever been told they don't belong. The room was utterly still. Every eye was fixed on her. Even Chloe and Dylan, seated in the front row by requirement, couldn't look away. Maya's voice trembled as she continued. "When they laughed, I thought I'd never recover. But the truth is, their cruelty taught me something no classroom ever could. It taught me how to stand up even when no one stands with you. It taught me that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's power. Because forgiveness means I get to choose who I become, not them." A single tear slipped down her cheek, glistening in the stage lights. She didn't wipe it away. She let it fall, real and raw. She closed the notebook slowly, holding it to her chest. Then she looked directly at Chloe and Dylan. "You hurt me," she said softly, her words slicing through the silence. "You made me feel small, dirty, unworthy. And for a long time I hated you for it, but now I don't. Because if I keep hating you, I stay trapped in that moment, and I refuse to live there anymore." The audience collectively held its breath. Maya took a small step closer to the edge of the stage. "So, tonight, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." The words hung in the air like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. A few gasps echoed. Chloe covered her mouth, tears streaming freely down her face. Dylan bowed his head, shoulders shaking. Maya's voice softened. "You don't have to apologize to me on this stage. You just have to change. That's the real apology." The room erupted not in applause, not yet, but in something deeper. It was the sound of people breathing again after holding their breath for too long. It was the weight of understanding settling in their chests. Chloe stood, suddenly trembling. "Maya," she began, her voice cracking. I don't even know what to say. "You have every right to hate me. But you didn't. You showed me what real strength looks like." Her voice broke and she turned to the audience, tears streaking her mascara. "I thought making people laugh made me powerful, but all it did was hide how empty I was inside. I was jealous of Maya, her confidence, her kindness, her light. And instead of learning from her, I tried to destroy it. I'm sorry. To her, and to every person I made feel small." There wasn't a sound in the auditorium except the soft sniffles of those listening. Dylan stood next, his voice low and rough. "She's right. I laughed because I was afraid to be different, afraid to look weak, but I get it now. I see what my silence did, what my laughter did. Maya, I'm sorry. I'm going to be better." Maya's eyes filled again, but this time with something gentler. Compassion. She nodded once, then turned back to the crowd. "This is what change looks like. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. But it's possible." Then she smiled, small at first, then full, radiant, unstoppable. "And to everyone watching, everyone who's ever felt invisible, your story matters. Don't wait for permission to tell it. The world needs your voice. The audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, crying. The sound filled every corner of the auditorium, spilling out into the halls. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled furiously. But none of it mattered to Maya. All she felt was the warmth of something she hadn't known in a long time – hope. As she stepped off the stage, her mom caught her in a tight embrace. "That was bigger than a speech, baby," she whispered. "That was healing." Maya smiled through her tears. "Yeah, Mom, for all of us." Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed, Maya lingered in the empty auditorium. The lights were dim, the seats empty now, but the energy still hung in the air, thick, sacred. She walked to the center of the stage and looked up at the spotlight. The same one that once terrified her. "This is where it happened," she murmured. "Where I stopped hiding." Behind her, she heard footsteps. Mr. Callahan approached, holding a folded piece of paper. "You left this in the dressing room," he said. Maya unfolded it. It was a note she'd written months ago, the night after the bullying incident. The ink was smudged from tears. "I wish I could disappear." She read it silently, then smiled softly and tore it in half. "Guess I didn't," she said. Mr. Callahan chuckled gently. "You did the opposite. You became visible to the whole world." She shook her head. "Not the world, Mr. Callahan. Just the ones who needed to see." He nodded. "Sometimes that's all it takes." They stood in silence for a moment before Maya spoke again. "You know what's funny? I used to think what happened to me ruined my life. But maybe it saved it." Mr. Callahan smiled. "Pain has a way of becoming purpose if you let it." As she walked out of the auditorium, the night air met her like a fresh breath. The sky above was clear, scattered with stars. Each one shimmered like a promise, tiny lights breaking through darkness. And for the first time, not buried, but shining. Her voice, once drowned out by laughter, had become a light that couldn't be dimmed. And as she looked up, she whispered to herself, "They kicked my chair, but they couldn't take my soul." The night was quiet, but her words echoed in her heart like thunder. That was the true climax, not the forgiveness, not the applause, but the moment she finally understood her own power. She hadn't just changed her school, she'd changed the story. And from that moment on, Maya Johnson was no longer the girl from the video. She was the girl who rose. Weeks passed, and Crestwood High began to look and feel like a different place. The story that had once divided the school was now the reason students came together. The Voices of Change project that Maya helped start had become a full-fledged movement, one that spread beyond Crestwood's walls. Schools across the district began adopting similar programs. Students who had never spoken about their pain before were now standing in front of classrooms, sharing their stories of identity, struggle, and resilience. And at the heart of it all was Maya Johnson, the girl who refused to stay silent. But Maya never saw herself as a hero. In fact, she often avoided the word entirely. To her, she was just someone who did what needed to be done, someone who decided that enough was enough. She still walked the same hallways, sat under the same oak tree during lunch, and wrote in the same notebook. But there was something different now, something unshakable, peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from forgetting, but the kind that blooms after surviving the storm. Chloe joined the Voices of Change program too. It wasn't easy at first. Many students still whispered about her. Some refused to sit next to her. But Maya noticed the effort. Chloe listened more than she spoke, helped organize events, and even started a podcast called Listen First, about understanding race and empathy. In her first episode, she said something that made Maya smile. "I used to think power came from being louder than everyone else, but I learned that real power comes from listening, apologizing, and trying again." Dylan, too, found his way. He joined the school's mentorship program. It's helping freshmen navigate their first year, especially those who felt out of place. "I can't change the past," he told Maya one afternoon as they set up chairs for a school event. "But I can make sure no one feels what you felt that day." Maya smiled softly. "That's all any of us can do." Even Mr. Callahan changed. He became a vocal advocate for equity in education, speaking at conferences about the importance of teacher intervention and empathy. He admitted his failures publicly, not as a form of penance, but as a way to teach others what silence costs. The district superintendent wrote a letter to Maya, thanking her for her courage. The school board established an annual scholarship in her name, the Maya Johnson Voice of Courage Award, given to students who used their voice to inspire change. When she stood at the first ceremony a year later, Maya didn't cry. She just looked out at the crowd faces of all colors, all stories, and felt a quiet gratitude, not for the pain she'd endured, but for what it had created. Her pain had built bridges. Her story had taught others how to speak. Her forgiveness had broken the cycle. After the event, Maya sat alone under the same tree where she'd once eaten lunch alone. The wind rustled the leaves gently, sunlight flickering between the branches. She opened her old notebook, the one she'd carried through every step of her journey, and flipped to the back. She began to write, "If you're reading this, maybe you've been where I was. Maybe you've been laughed at, ignored, or made to feel small. Maybe the world has told you your skin, your hair, your name, your truth doesn't belong. I want you to know it does. You do. And no matter how hard they try to silence you, remember this. Your voice was born from something divine. It was never meant to be quiet." She paused, letting the words sink in. Then she added one final line, simple, powerful. "Eternal, speak, because silence is where injustice survives." She closed the notebook, held it to her heart, and looked up at the sky. The clouds drifted lazily above, white against the endless blue. She thought about that day in class, the laughter, the pain, the shame, and how it had led her here. Maya smiled. The same world that had once broken her had now listened to her, and that, she realized, was the moral hidden inside every story like hers. The world doesn't change when you fight hate with hate. It changes when you meet hate with truth. When you choose healing over humiliation. When you let your scars become stories that teach, not wounds that fester. That's what being powerful truly means. It's not about revenge. It's not about going viral. It's about becoming so strong in your truth that no one's cruelty can erase. The real victory isn't when your enemies are punished. It's when you reclaim your peace. That's what Maya did. That's what anyone can do. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the field, Maya whispered one last thought to herself. A quiet promise meant for anyone who'd ever been made to feel less than enough. They thought they were ending my story, but they were only helping me begin. And with that, she stood up, brushed the grass from her jeans, and walked toward the light, her head high, her heart unburdened, her voice unbreakable. Because stories like hers don't end with pain. They end with purpose. No act of cruelty, no word of hate, no moment of humiliation can define your worth. The world may try to silence your truth, but your voice, your courage, has the power to rewrite the story. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the final act of strength that turns victims into victors. Speak, stand, and shine. Because when one person dares to rise, they light the way for countless others.